All right, so we're recording. Recorded this whole video. I think it was a good 45 minutes. And I didn't get a recording of it, so maybe I didn't record it. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. We'll just do it again. So today we're talking about um I I turned 49 this year, this past May in 2026. And I am collecting all of the lessons that I have learned during my 40s so that when I walk into age 50, I am armed and ready and excited about moving forward with the next decade of my life. And today I wanted to talk about happiness. Happiness. What have I learned about happiness? And really there's a ton of things that I learned, but I wanted to particularly express three things that are top of mind for a number of reasons. Um, the first lesson about happiness that I learned specifically in my 40s is that no one owes you happiness. No one owes me happiness. No one owes you happiness. Um, Happiness is something that you have to find for yourself. And I say this as a person who became single in my 40s. So, somewhere in my mid 30s, I can't remember the age exactly, I got divorced after 8 years of being married. And then shortly after I got divorced, I got into another relationship that lasted about 5 years. Um, and what I learned during that time was that I found it very scary to be a single person, um, because I had always been taught that, having some sort of a male figure around um, would be better than having nothing, right? It would be better than having nothing. And I think many women get that message, whether it's told to you specifically or um, or you just sort of pick it up from the examples that are around you. But your happiness is really dependent upon you, and to put your happiness on the partner that you are with is unfair. It's unfair to that person. Now, mind you, the person that I was with, I had both of the people that I was with, I had no business being with. I had absolutely no business being with either one of those persons. Um, but once I was able to leave the both of them, I was faced with, okay, the question that I was faced with, now that you've sort of dropped them, I can move forward with my life. And what do you want now? Like what is it that I was looking for? Um, and I'm not really sure I had an answer. I didn't have an answer. And that was the pursuit. That really has been the pursuit of my 40s, to figure out what it is that makes me happy. And at 49, I think that I do know what makes me happy. Um, and I think it's something that is always, um, what makes you happy is always evolving. So it's good for you as a person to know, um, to be in tune with who you are and who it is that you are becoming. That's a pursuit that never that is also never ending, and your happiness is connected to who it is that you are becoming. So when I say that happiness is totally dependent on you, it helps that you figure that out while you are a single person. I really wish that I had gotten the message that to before you get married, you should be very clear on what it is that makes you happy, so that you find a person that you connect with, um, not because they make you happy, but because you connect on, you connect on similar things, similar values that sort of make you happy together. Um, yeah. So you can't, no one owes you happiness. You make yourself happy. Happiness lesson number two that I learned in my 40s is that it is okay to make to make, how am I saying this? It is okay to make, I'm going to say self-full decisions to make yourself happy. It is okay to make self-full decisions um, to make you happy. Again, preferably you want to do this while you're single, so that when you connect, again, when you connect with someone, you are connecting on the fact that you have things in common that make you happy, and you don't necessarily are looking and depending on that person to make you happy, but you get to share experiences that can make you happy together. um let's see. One of the things, there was a few years ago when I was just kind of talking to a gentleman, uh and we were just kind of trying to see if there was an opportunity somewhere for us to be able to date. And so we're on the phone one day talking, and I mentioned the fact that like to paint. I like to paint, so I had, we were on video phone, and I had my little painting stuff. Um, like I had an easel, there's just a little mini wooden easel that I would put on my writing desk, simply because it made me feel comfortable, as opposed to having the paper, laid flat down on the paper, and I had to be like this. It's just, it felt good for me to be able to paint this way with the paper sitting up this way. And I remember him saying, he kind of chuckled when he first saw it. And I'm like, what the hell is that about? And he's like, you got all your stuff, you got different colors, and I'm thinking that I'm sharing something that was important to me. Not that he necessarily needs to be a painter in order to enjoy it, but the pursuit of me pursuing the thing that I like um, should be attractive to the person that I am speaking to. And, likewise, I don't necessarily have to enjoy the actual activities that he likes in his everyday life, but the fact that he pursues that thing that he loves would be attractive to me. Um, and so he's like, that's silly. It's kind of silly for you to be a grown person at your age, doing arts and crafts. Um, and he's like, like this is stuff my 5-year-old does. And he was looking for, it looked like he was looking for a way to be able to belittle what the thing that was important to me. So I learned really quickly. Number one, he's not to be dating, so he was blocked. he got blocked. Um, but also you don't always have to share everything with everybody. Um, which brings me um, to the point that sometimes the things that make you happy are for you and you alone. You don't have to prove it to anybody. Um, you don't need their stamp of approval. They don't need to join you in that thing that makes you happy. Um, it can strictly be a thing that is only for you to enjoy, and it lights you up on the inside. Um, if you can find a group of people who can share in that, that's wonderful. But you don't need to do that. It's not, um, it's not necessary. Happiness is a self-full pursuit. You don't have to do it to make your children proud of you, your mama proud. It's simply for your own personal enjoyment, which I don't think a lot of adults allow. We allow ourselves to do because we do a lot of things out of obligation. I think we learn to do things out of obligation. And because we live a life that is full of obligations, we like to do those first. And part of this whole conversation around what it looks like to take care of yourself, the whole self-care conversation about what that looks like. It often the sort of surface level stuff comes up, like you know, do your manning, get your hair done, buy yourself a new lipstick. That's that, which is all, all of those are nice things to do for yourself. But true self-care is self-full. It's self-full. It's something that you do for yourself. Not that you're necessarily ignoring other people who are around you, but you're doing it simply because it lights you up from the inside, and that's it. This is your way of being able to take care of yourself, and you find a way to do it. You find the time to be able to do it. You make that a part of your regular schedule. Um, and in most cases, you don't miss that appointment with yourself because you make a promise to yourself to put your happiness on the front burner. Your happiness should always be a priority. And the things that make you happy, this is what I actually had to learn. The things that make you happy should actually, um, if you think of your life as like a pyramid, I don't know if this is even a proper way to be able to say it, but if you are at the top of the pyramid and there's the two arms that come out from the top of the pyramid, which sort of maybe an umbrella. I'll call it an umbrella. If you are at the top of that umbrella, and everything else that comes underneath that umbrella is an extension of who you are. Um, then everything under that umbrella is there based on the things that make you happy. And I actually learned this from the gentleman that I worked with when I was in Thailand, um, who served as herbalists, and they were shaman in different ways. Um, that I've worked with a handful of other people, but the men that I worked with, um, Black men at that, showed me that putting themselves at the top of their priority list was what deep self-care actually looked like. And that was new for me. I had never seen that before. With the examples that I had always seen from both women and men was one of deep self-sacrifice. You had to earn happiness. Um, you had to, you had to jump through a number of hoops in order to be able to get to the happiness part. And what they demonstrated to me was that, you know, everything that you do in your life should be an extension of the things that make you happy. And so I would watch these men. Well, you got to remember that we were living in Thailand. So these men would first they would organize their schedules around doing things like research, because as people who were healers, their work depended on their ability, to keep up and to learn new things, to learn how to be able to support people who had health issues and needed help in health or emotional ways. Um, and so they would put in their schedule 1 to 2 days in the week where They were not constantly in need of seeing clients. So they would include a research day. This is a day where they would sit, they would, they would have their books, they would do their online research, they would go to, maybe there was a person that they would need to be able to see that they could learn from. And it was really just fascinating to see because in the people that I had always seen before, like they had clients, sure they had, businesses that were booming, but they had no system to be able to fill themselves up again. And so as a result, they were always exhausted. They were always exhausted. And what I learned from looking at that is that people in helping professions, people who worked in helping professions were always on the verge of falling apart. And I learned that that was just the thing that you do when you are a helper. I did the same thing. When I was a teacher, I taught adult students. I don't know, maybe a good, and I taught adult students in various capacities for a good 10, 11, maybe even 12 years. Um, Everywhere from higher education all the way down to teaching adults basic education, how to read and how to write so that they can take their GED and go on, get a job and go on with the rest of their lives. Um, and it was always something that, even though I love the work will wear you out. And unless you know how to say no, you just wind up worn out all the time. And so what these men in Thailand taught me was that you have to create purposeful space for your own personal happiness. For men, you have to learn how to create space for your own personal happiness. So they had their research days that helped to connect them to why it is that they loved what they were doing in the first place. Um, they would go to, uh, again, we're in Thailand. They would go to waterfalls and do, these sort of, I don't know what to call it, ceremonies, if you want to call it that. And you would take flowers, these beautiful flowers, and, you would sort of rub the flowers on your skin. And there's certain ceremonies that you would do to be able to get a certain result. I'll just say that, to be able to get a certain result. And it's purely a personal thing. It's not we're not. I'm always trying to explain saying things so that Christians will feel comfortable, but take it or leave it. Um, but that to be able to take that, to do those things, and not to just like do it real quick when you got the time. This was part of their work. Like this was part of, just like you have to see customers, you also have to make time to do your research. You also have to make time to go to the forest, to go to the waterfall with the flowers and do your flower ceremonies. Sometimes they were a forgiveness ceremony, to be able to create um, more space for you to be able to take on, the energies of other people who were ill, or to be able to wash off those energies of people who were ill physically, mentally, spiritually. All that mattered. All of that is part of your happiness ritual. And you can do this in a number of ways. So that was a long explanation of saying that happiness is a self-ful pursuit. You do it. You're the only one who's responsible for it. And no one is responsible for giving that to you. Now, my third and final thing that I wanted to share about happiness is that we always like to believe that money will make us happier, and money is connected to happiness. I'm not gonna lie. During the times when your money is looking funny, like life is, life feels less joyful, right? Um, but what I've learned is that money is a neutral multiplier. Money is neutral. It's not necessarily connected to your happiness. Like it, there's a foundation that you need to be able to have on who you are as a person. And for me, I have five values that I have figured out in the last few years. I have five values that I think are important for me. A couple of them. One is health and well-being is the route to happiness. That's my first core value. That's something, if I'm what all of the things that I do in my life will somehow connect back to that number one value, to my health and well-being. If somehow, if I get involved in a thing that compromises my health and well-being, well, don't be surprised when you're off the you're off your track to happiness, or you're off your track in happiness. Um, Another thing is, personal integrity is really important to me. If I'm doing things that compromise my personal integrity, don't be surprised when you feel a way about it. You feel like you've lost your way, and now you're asking yourself questions, and you're questioning other people who are around you, and why are you here, and this isn't what it is that you decided that you wanted to do. Um, but where the money part comes in is that you have your foundation of your values, right? You bring in money. Now, if I didn't have those values, but I, still have money, because people who are foul, people who have, no discernment, people who have no sense of personal integrity, people who are not empathetic, these types of people, people who are narcissistic, they can make money all the time. They have just as much access to making money as those who are the opposite of that, people who we would consider to be good people. It's just a matter of who has the skill to be able to make money, whether you're making money in a job, whether you're making money in a particular business that you create for yourself, or you're creating wealth through investments. Um, you know, Everyone, for the most part, just, go with me. Everyone, for the most part, has access to information that will help them to get to money or wealth. However, what I've learned is that money is a neutral multiplier, which means that if you are a drunk, you're a fallen down drunk, and you cheat on your partner every chance you get. Well, you give that person some money, and they're just going to find more opportunities to be more of a fallen down drunk, and more opportunities to cheat on their partner. If you have a person whose idea of happiness is, I don't know, working at a local food bank. I used to love working at working at the food bank. I used to do. Um, it's just because I really love food, but I would get to be able to organize the fresh food deliveries from some of the restaurants. This is when I lived in Washington, D.C. I would get I would organize some of the deliveries from local restaurants as well as from grocery stores to be able to get what they had left over and to be able to make it available for people in the community to be able to come and get food as they needed it with their families. And that was a lot of fun. But if you give that person, that type of a person who has ideas that are good for themselves and for the community, you're just going to multiply that. Um, and so that made me switch. Like, okay, like a lot of people say that you need to be able to have a certain amount of money in order to be happy. Well, you get to decide what that amount is. And some people will say, people like to say, well, you got to make six figures in order to make it in this world. It depends on where you live in the world. Well, I need to be a millionaire in order to be happy. Again, it depends on what you're doing with the money. And a lot of times the pursuit of the money to be able to be able to get that type of money feels so hard is because you don't know what you're using it for. You haven't connected it you haven't connected that dollar amount to any of your values. What are you going to do with with your six figures a year? What are you going to do with your millions, your multiple millions of dollars? What are you going to do with it? That's the part that is worth pursuing. It's not the dollar amount alone, but it's knowing, being clear on what it is that makes you happy and how the money is going to multiply the thing that makes you happy because money is neutral. I hope that makes sense. And so, if you want to be able to figure this out for yourself, I would say you can start with the practice of writing down your five core values. What are your five core values? Like when I was asked to do this exercise, and this took me some time. It took me a couple months, I would say. Um, like this is the part of being a human that I think a lot of people just sort of breeze by. They think that they know what it is in their head, but until you actually write it down, you may not be as clear as you think you are, which is why I think the practice of journaling is so important. Because you get to write things down. You get to write down that conversation that you have in your head. And then you'll be able to decide, okay, is the life I'm living actually reflecting what it is that I'm writing in my journal? Does the life that I'm living reflecting what I am writing down or what I'm saying is important to me? And then it just makes you more cognizant of what it is that you want. And that way, when we get towards the end of our lives, we can sort of look back and say, wow, we actually lived with purpose. You lived with purpose and you wrote the script, not somebody else. You wrote the script and not, your mom and dad or your school or your religion or, wherever it is that you may have picked up values from. What are the values that are important to you personally? Take some time to be able to figure that out. And when you do, put some version of it on the wall. I have it up on my wall. You know, I I travel a lot, and so I use Post-it notes to be able to move stuff around and change things out or add things to it um, as I feel necessary. But once my next move will feel more permanent to me, and I will have a more permanent way to be able to create this. But you can do this on Post-it notes. Once you write it down and you figure it out in your journal, but then you want a visual representation that you can look at it all the time. And that could be a Pinterest board, it could be a vision board if you like to do that. But I think writing down your actual values, I think, is a valuable exercise to help you to lead to you living a more happy life. So, my name is Halana Black. If you like this sort of a thing, if this sort of a thing is sort of your jam, I have a Substack. It's called Wealthy, Wise, and Whole. Wealthy, Wise, and Whole. And it is a subscriber supported publication where I share essays about life, um, and living in midlife, going for what it is that you want, deciding what you want, questions that I pose today. And at the end of those essays, I ask you in a journal question, um, to take your own personal journal and to be able to answer a journal question on your own. And I really love to be able to ask really juicy questions, questions that matter. Um, I see sometimes, journal questions are like, how do you feel about, you know, how do you feel about tea and crumpets? And it's like, child, I don't know. I, I don't know. So I like to be able to ask more juicy life questions that really get you thinking. And it may take you some time. Like, I don't really think you need a different journaling question every day. And if you did, I don't think I don't want to say that you're not doing it properly, but perhaps you're not giving it as much thought as you perhaps should. Because you might think you know your answer and you write it down, and then you come back the next day and you're like, you know what, after giving it the thought, maybe I should rethink this for these reasons. So if that's if that's the way you think, because that's really how I think. If that's the way you think, you might enjoy my Substack. So go ahead, click on the link in the description box, or just go to the comment section. And also, I really need you to subscribe. I need you to subscribe. Subscribe, hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed here. The reason is I'm about 140 subscribers away from hitting 1,000, and I need to be able to meet the subscriber count needed to be able to monetize my channel. So I'm going for 1,000 subscribers plus, what is it, 4,000 watch hours. So if you watched through this entire video, thank you so much for adding to my watch hour. Um, my watch hour, uh, the number of watch hours that I need in order to be able to get my channel um, uh, monetized. So we did it. I lost the original video, but here we are. But I appreciate you. Have a great day, morning, afternoon, evening. Peace.